Why were the countries we're from colonized?
One thing we should be able to do is like get our stories back ourselves and tell the stories.
Largely, they made it seem like they were smarter than Africans.
On the ground, there's a generation of frustrated Africans who want change. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Season 7, Episode 5 of the Joel Mr. Money podcast. I go by the name DJ Anzo. I'm your co-host here with my other co-host, Uncle E, Young Money Millionaire, and a place to be.
Come on.
And today, we have an action-packed schedule for you.
Sheesh.
Joined by none other than the man of the hour, the man at every hour.
You want me?
One of the most just people you need to know in life.
Of course.
Our brother Don V.
Come on.
Big time, Mupi time.
Yes, sir. Welcome,
Appreciate
sir.
you guys,
Welcome,
man.
sir.
Welcome
Appreciate
to the
you
pod.
guys.
Welcome to the pod, bro.
Good to be here, bro. It's about time.
It's about time.
You know?
I'm not
Yep.
gonna lie. But in the interest of time, I think the argument we have today, the central question we're asking today, we thought you were the perfect person to give your perspective on. Because now we have a relatively diverse representation, right? So we've got Nigeria in the building.
Well, we didn't ask him his question, Anzo. The question.
The principal question.
The principal question, Vic.
forget?
Not so fast, bro.
Not
so fast,
forget?
Vic.
There's
We
a
got the question
long-standing
for you.
tradition
Yes.
man.
that we have on the podcast. Why don't you do the honors, bro?
So, Vic, as an honorary member of the Joel Amadi podcast, there's one question we ask all of our special guests, which is, who are you and where are you really, really from?
So my name is Victor Amopitan, and I'm from Jos, Nigeria, because I grew up there. But then I'm from Western Nigeria. I'm from Kogi. I grew up in Jos, so I feel like I have ties to both places equally. I like to say that's where I'm from because honestly, that's where all my values are from. That's where I learned to be who I am today, and that's something I value, and that's something I still carry to today. So wherever I live is where I live, but where I'm from is always Nigeria.
That might be the flyest answer we've had. bro.
Love that.
That was fire. Thank you for that, bro.
Thanks, my
Great
guys.
job,
Thanks, my
sir.
guys.
But yes, going off of exactly what you said, we have representation where not only are you from a region of Nigeria that not everyone automatically thinks about.
Yep.
It speaks to Nigeria's diversity, but also you have a unique perspective because you've seen a lot of the world, right? Then we have Gambia, of course.
The Gambia, get it right, my boy.
The Gambia.
Yes, sir.
And then we have Uganda, right?
Yep.
So the central question we're framing up today is, why were we really colonized? And the approach we're going to take today and the argument we're going to sort of examine is, one, from the lens of the book Guns, Germs, and Steel. If you guys haven't read that, read it. Controversial in some ways, but influential nonetheless.
Yes.
And then we're gonna segment from there and just branch out into some other questions or just guiding questions that we have. So, Uncle E, why don't you give us a synopsis on the book
Yes.
and sort of frame up why it's even relevant today? Should we believe it? And then we'll give our opinion on what we think about it.
No, of course. And to just add on to what you said, Nigerian, Ugandan, Gambian, different parts of Africa, different forms of colonization, and the effects of that decades later, we're now here being able to have this conversation. But a big part of it is, why were the countries we're from colonized? Why didn't our ancestors sail to Europe and colonize them?
That's how funny you
That is a question.
Things I think about as I'm telling you. I go on my walk, I'm like, why wouldn't we sail and go and colonize this?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And if we grow up and a lot of the indoctrination that we had and the stereotypes where the Europeans were superior in terms of what they had, largely they made it seem like they were smarter than Africans. That's why they were able to come infiltrate us, outwit us, divide us, conquer us, colonize us, and take our resources. And the book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, why we talk about it so much is it's a very in-depth explanation to how the Europeans were able to conquer most of the world. I hate to say this. It sucks to say conquer most of the world, but that's the reality. It was due to three main factors, which was guns, the germs that they brought across and were able to eradicate a lot of people easily, and then steel. So when we're looking at Africa, I just wanted to share the quick 3 points the book summarizes for why that was able to happen. The first one is what it was called the axis theory, which explains where the Europe and Asia, the Eurasia, is from an east to west axis, where the climate was necessarily the same, but the big factor was it was easy to transport and trade ideas, food production, crops, and also just animals as well.
Well documented.
Well
Silk Road,
documented.
etc.
Whereas in Africa, it's north-south.
Yeah.
And from north, you have the Saharan Desert, which is a huge ecological barrier. You have in Congo, rainforest there. And they were just naturally much more ecological barriers going north to south versus going east to west in Eurasia. And because of that, you had spread of crops, animals, and ideas much more quickly and rapidly in the Eurasian continent versus in Africa.
Okay.
Huge factor, right? And then the second one is what was deemed the domestic advantage, which is that at the end of the day, Europe had cows, it says horses, and pigs. 13 out of 14 of the domesticable, I hope I said it right, animals were from Europe and Asia. What did we have in the continent? Zebras, rhinos. Can you ride a zebra into battle? Those animals, you can't domesticate no rhino. You think Shaka Zulu can be in a lion? You go and try and domesticate a lion. But it's a huge factor, right? Because domesticable animals, food production, agriculture, you can use them for plowing. So those were the three reasons. You know, the reason why Europeans were able to gain that advantage through technology to then discover was because strictly of their geographical locations being from an east to west axis of their continent, where they didn't have the ecological barriers, they had the animals that can be domesticated and also food production, which allowed them to develop the technology and spread so quickly amongst that whole continent that led to later what we knew as the colonization of Europe across the globe.
Berlin Agreement.
So it was never intellectual. There is no actual facts, which the book shows, to that the Europeans were smarter than the South Americans or the Africans or the East Asians, the native Australians. It was not because of that. It was because where the region they hailed from, technology was able to transfer easier because there were no ecological barriers and they had animals that they can be domesticated.
So essentially the book is saying we were on island time while they were dealing with the snow and sleet.
Right.
Got you. Okay.
So I guess what does that now mean for you guys to hear that? How do we change that superiority complex that was a lot of times ingrained and made it seem like when we look at Europe and you see, you know, the development and first world, third world, it came up very early. We grew up making it seem like there is a superiority associated with this region, and it can easily mislead you to think that's why they colonized us. But history shows it was not because of that. So I guess what does that mean for you guys, and how do we reframe our mindset knowing those facts?
Yeah. See, like, unfortunately, like, you know, the Victor writes the book, and since they colonized us, they've had that massive influence on our educational system. That unfortunately, what people are taught is what they know. And unless they seek knowledge, it's just not going to, you know, very rarely does it come to them. There's so much of colonization that we don't learn in school. We don't learn about, you know, even the fight back to colonization. We just hear, you know, you were conquered and
that's
so
your history.
That's exactly
your history.
So it just gives you this inferiority complex of you were conquered, without any more context to that. Because there was a lot of culture that was still here. I just kind of get swept on or very briefly talked about, and then not much more said after that. Which is why primarily, like I said, like the Victor writes the story. One thing we should be able to do is like get our stories back ourselves and tell the stories. There's no need to still be more focused on certain aspects of colonialism at this point in time. For a lot of countries, the independence was like 1960s-ish around, and by now we should be able to tell our own side of the story. We don't have to tell the story that we were told to tell, because that's what's continuing this lack of like awareness as to what actually happened.
We need one of Clues bombs right there for that bar. but here's a question though, because it was our reality to not know our history like that. How would you say though, like in a Nigerian home, because there's this fun thing that people say: if there's 100 people in the room and one Nigerian, you'll know who the Nigerian is, right? And I think that's the best thing about Nigerians. It's like they'll never be shy to be who they are. So in your home, in your Nigerian home, or like culturally, do you think that was kind of like intangibly just passed down to you? Or do you think that you learned that once you left the home and then started to sort of like research the world for yourself?
I would say from home, Nigerians are definitely thought to be, not to feel inferior, but nonetheless, what you read in school or what you learn in school does make you kind of feel inferior to like the West. But then I would say a huge part of everything is after leaving home, starting to do my own research or just starting to learn more. Sometimes information does come to you and it's like, oh, this is intriguing. This is not really what I was taught. And then you look more into it and realize there's a different side to the story. There's more to it. Yeah, it's a reality. We were in fact colonized, but then there's more to that story. And I would like you said, like being Nigerian, there's definitely the confidence and the pride in being like who you are and the pride in your culture. That's one thing, but then there's still that subconscious part of you that you've learned that you were conquered by the West, so you might start off life feeling inferior to them until you know more.
That's a fair point.
Things fall apart.
Great
example, right?
Shout out Chinua Achebe.
The pride that comes with, despite the arrival of the colonizer and the Nigerians retaining of their tradition and their culture being so important to them, and that pride associated with that, allows the inferiority complex to not be present, because you value your tradition and your culture so much that whether or not the missionaries come, the colonialists come, and they might conquer, but you're not going to lose your traditions, your culture. And it's a symbol of, when you go to Nigeria, like the names, obviously everyone talks about the main languages, but so many different languages, like the practice of spirituality there through traditional practices, it's still very prevalent in Nigeria. So even though they were quote unquote colonized, they still did a much better job, I would say, than most other African countries in retaining their culture and traditional pre-colonial
cultural identity.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair. If I'm relating it to East Africa now, I think that although we may have been colonized the same amount of time, it's a little bit more complex because like you can make the argument that West Africa is more not culturally alike, but culturally similar. That's the same thing. But like than East Africa. Here's why. If you look at the Horn of Africa, right? You have Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Djibouti. Those guys are kind of
similar,
yes, very similar, like the Abyssinian culture. And you come down the coast a little bit, and you have like Swahili people, which is now Tanzania, coastal Kenya, and then it kind of caps there. Tanzania, right? And then you have, as you come inland, you have like the Rift Valleyans, so these guys who are always winning the races. And then you have like more Bantustan people closer to like central Uganda, Congo. And that's kind of the general routes. Go to the north of that, so South Sudan, northern Uganda, a lot of like Nilotic people. We're so culturally different from like Ethiopians, for example, or like some Tanzanians, because a lot of their influence either came from like the Abyssinian culture, empire, or like Arab culture.
Spread of Islam.
The spread of Islam over there. And then you have us who are not cosmopolitan in the sense of like what you think of like New York City today, but more cosmopolitan in culture because we didn't have that many like kingdoms. We didn't have that many like chieftaincies. We kind of all just coexisted.
So it was like clans. You guys didn't form states.
We didn't form. There were like sort of states, but like we spoke a close enough language to our neighbor.
I see.
You see what I'm saying? So where it was like sure, tribalism did become a thing at a point, but I don't think historically that's what it is. We actually were more nomadic than anything because like my great grandfather or something, he's not actually Ugandan, and not to get into like what even makes it Ugandan, but he came down from like the South Sudan, and nobody really knows where. You see what I'm saying? And if you look at like anthropologic routes for all of us, it's kind of similar. They say like our people kind of trace back to the Chad Basin, and that's kind of where like the Yoruba people started. And you'll see we have similarities in words, stuff like that. So it's a little bit different of an argument because the reason I was kind of trying to tie this all together is I think it looks different, where we were already nomadic and cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
And so when it arrived, it was an easy assimilation because we were just like, oh, this system works, cool, we'll jump into it. Not really looking at the long-term effects of what that could be. And so culturally, like when I was growing up, I didn't have like pre-existing ideas of what we looked like before colonialism because it didn't really matter at that time. A lot of what I learned came like later in my life because like you in school, we didn't really learn much about like the effects of colonialism. It was more like, yeah, this happened and okay, that's life kind of thing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, we were countries that were never supposed to be. You know? If you look at Nigeria, being one country, how were they even able to achieve that diversity, you know, in different ethnic groups, just so much diversity to just group them up all in one country and make them one state?
Yeah.
How? Like that shouldn't have happened. And you see a lot of the issues probably that happen now, that's the same.
Right.
Me from Gambia, right? How is Gambia even a country?
Right.
Because of a river that was needed during the times of colonialism and slave trade, all of that. And now we're in a place where we're a country inside, surrounded by another country that we share the same culture or language as, but one's colonized by the British, one's colonized by the French.
Yeah.
And the fact that we just kind of went with that, even when we gained independence, why wasn't there a rectification of, let's say, Nigeria, representative of the different diverse regions and the ethnic groups associated? Like you said, why didn't Uganda revert back to what it was, which was borderless? You know, same thing in my area, Gambia, Senegal. Why did we become separate sovereign nations? So it really has to, I feel like, comes down to the resources that were available in each country that needed the country to remain basically a sovereign nation for the extraction of those resources. Because it's hard for me, I would say, to extract resources, natural resources from a country, from one country versus three, or split up back into what we were pre-colonialists. So the fact that we remained a state, Nigeria remained Nigeria, Uganda remained Uganda, Gambia became Gambia, Senegal, I think it's because it allowed the constant flow of what was already established for why we were colonized, which was the resources we provided.
Right. Which were ultimately being uprooted and sent out of the country.
Yes. So we gained colonialism, guys. We escaped colonialism, independence, and now what do we see today in terms of our resources and who's still coming here and trying to control and benefit and also enrich themselves from those resources? We're still in a position where we're dependent on foreign aid, development loans, infrastructure trades, meaning we will build a stadium for you, we'll build a port for you, we will build a railroad service for you in exchange for what?
Right.
So how are we still not in a form of neo-colonialism if what we see probably in each of our countries is still the trading of our resources to the very people or new foreign powers in order to control us in a way or another?
Right.
So kind of what does that look like for you guys then?
What does it look like in Nigeria?
Yeah, I would. I feel like more often than not, we see headlines like an IMF loan being packaged for Nigeria or for like one of the countries. That wasn't even like there was no prior discussion or prior news about that. So and it's clear that those loans are definitely getting used to really keep it. In my opinion, it's just repackaged colonialism because it's the same goal, just achieving the same goal, getting resources off of the continent to outside the continent. And it's like now it's less via British rulers are like actually on the continent, and more so just we have our own president, but then we still have these loans that kind of control, because they're structured in such a way that they usually don't even lead to development.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of reasons for that.
And just the way they're structured, the rules of the loan, and then the repayment plans, it doesn't give us I don't think they're fair enough to even call like an actual loan.
They're just new shackles.
Yeah, they're just new shackles that just essentially tie us back to having to send our resources abroad. So I feel like those loans, the foreign aid, or some of the foreign aid, usually just ties back into colonialism again.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest new player, but it's been there for a while, is the U.S. because most of these transactions are done in the U.S. dollar, right?
Facts.
So if this brand of U.S. imperialism is just, like you said, packaged differently, why is the U.S. going up in arms that Traore is in power and they call him like the biggest threat to the African continent, right? Why do they have their hands meddled in so many things? I think they're just really good about hiding ultimately what they're trying to do, which is the new brand of imperialism.
Yep.
It just looks different. But China, we see that they're offering direct business propositions through the private sector, quote unquote, but it's just like enormous loans that are made out that we know we're not going to repay back. Sure, we'll come build you a road, a hospital, a new stadium, a new port, whatever the case may be, and just pay us back whenever, but you still owe us that money. Guys, what do
You owe us that money. Actually, don't worry. We'll just take all the fish you guys have available for a minute.
Exactly.
They find a way.
Exactly.
What they'd give us, that little stadium or little, I don't want to say hospital. At least hospital, we get it.
Yeah.
But whatever they build for you, because they're smart. I think their strategy is really smart because you see what they have done for you. It's not through that loan where you don't know where the funds are going.
Right.
You're gonna see that building, that port. And you're like, oh yeah, the Chinese are building this. They built that stadium. You're gonna see what they build, but you don't see what they take.
It's like, oh, let me get the gold mine license.
Now that gold mine license, that oil production, your fishing, your ports. I think, it's the opposite. They operate on the opposite model. The West, I think, is you don't see what they're giving you. You just hear these news, these funds.
Handouts.
Like you hear the handouts. But you never see what have they actually done. Like we said, we don't see the impact. I can't look at one time, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the IMF project that built this.
High key.
When have I ever seen all these NGOs? When have I ever seen, I'm like, oh man, this NGO, like, oh yeah, they did this. You never see what the West do. You just hear it on news and articles.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
It's very different. But the Chinese, and now even the Turkish to a certain degree,
I think a lot of countries are doing
they do. You see, they switched it up.
Yeah.
So you will see the Parliament House, the stadiums. You'll see the infrastructure they built, but you don't see what they're taking.
Yeah, and at least you and I might see it.
Yeah.
But the man on the ground.
The man on the ground wouldn't see it. They're like, oh yeah, Chinese built this.
Yeah.
They're helping us. They're doing good.
The road is
good. It's tarmac. It's nice. But do you know what China has taken? What is taken from your country?
Yeah, in fact, unfortunately, we also don't have people who would actually negotiate good loans or good contracts with these countries. Because on one hand, I'm not, truly we can have good business deals with other countries. that would actually benefit us. Like there's definitely good use. There's advantages to having like a proper port or railway system, like to get us to get resources across the continent. The problem is when people come and perhaps they offer this, for example, the Chinese. Is there someone on hand on our end who's actually going to negotiate something that is genuinely beneficial for us?
Thank you.
Similar to the IMF loans, for example, if a loan is structured in such a way where it's actually going to be of no benefit to your country, should you be taking it? Why should a loan govern, how you set laws and how you pay salaries and how you control your country essentially over like some money that like is not structured to benefit you? Like I feel like we always talk about the kleptocracy on the continent where, unfortunately, our leaders aren't exactly. They're not thinking far ahead enough to actually, even if you're going to work with other countries, like work in such a way that benefits you. Like truly, there's trade among China and US they have their own trade agreements and trade issues, whatever is going on. So we should be able to work with countries, but also work with countries in the sense where like this is also a deal for us. It's not just a deal for you. Yeah. You're not here to
it's a win-win.
Yeah, it's a win. It should be a win-win situation. Yeah. Whoever we're dealing with should be a win-win situation.
Yeah, I think the key argument I was making last episode with the institutions. If you lack institutions or processes where the structural integrity cannot get challenged, meaning, okay, it can, sure, in theory, but like there's serious checks and balances and ramifications for challenging that encourages a culture of like competency, right? Or compliance, where I know that if I'm going in and I'm being corrupt, there's not just a slap on the wrist. There's a serious consequence for my actions. Unfortunately, while we have constitutions and whatnot, people right now are like, I can amend this.
There are no checks and balances.
No checks and balances.
You can just go and amend and say, I have unlimited terms. You can do whatever you want.
Exactly.
And I mean, but then if we talk about neo-colonialism or, it's just a new form, like they bring these aids and the Chinese and come in and build these projects, sounds like we're still the problem. Because let's say if we're looking at IMF funds, which we never see the effect, or we see Chinese at least coming in and building infrastructure. At the end of the day, if our leaders, our governments, our systems, the institutions, had properly managed and utilized those funds, we probably would have had much more development than if it was just all embezzled and mismanaged. So then, is neo-colonialism really our mindset, especially the mindset of our governance and the failure of our systems, not taking advantage of the aid and the deals that were proposed to us? Because the Chinese, the Western, they're still gonna get what they want. But we didn't get anything out of, to what Vic was saying, bargaining and making sure that when we receive those funds, we benefited so that we pay them back, get out of those terms and liabilities, and make sure we own control. Like we just get stuck in them, it piles up, it builds up a lot of debt, and then we just have to now keep giving up more of what we own, our resources, in order to continue to receive that aid, that then it just creates like a negative loop that we kind of just get stuck in.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. I do think that this is the era of undoing a lot of what was done, if we can get into those roles. Guys, if any of you get into a position of power in politics and you're doing nonsense, I'm gonna come into your office with a hard slap. Be like, this is not what we envisioned. I don't care how many M's you're making. But in all seriousness, I think it's on the ground, and I think we're getting close to time here, but on the ground, there's a generation of frustrated Africans who want change. Who want a proper, there's always gonna be issues, but at least something to live for, where I'm like, I just graduated from one of the top universities in my country. I can look forward to getting into a role that is gonna be good for my family, good for me, our longevity, and contributing to the prosperity of this great nation. I think that's the key thing that needs to happen, and that only happens with proper governance. You feel me? So that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, we see the brain drain argument, right? Like, how many Nigerians are dying to leave Nigeria? How many Gambians and Senegalese are literally dying to leave those countries?
Yep.
East Africans, like, we see examples of it all around. And then we get abroad, and now it's like, I've made something of myself. And then you go back, and it's like, where's my piece of that?
Yep.
Give me a handout, right? And the issue there is, I haven't taught you how to fish. I've given you fish for the day, for the week, for the month, but I haven't taught you how to fish. And now we're stuck in that same cycle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Really huge point with the brain drain happening to the continent. It's, like, I remember, I think I saw something a few weeks back about, the number one Nigerian's goal is to leave the country. And that's not doing good for anyone. Like, first off, we're millions of people in the country.
200 plus.
We're not all leaving the country. And we're leaving the country for what? Like, that's our home. Yeah. If anything, like, I feel like everyone's, diaspora included, everyone's goal should be, how can we own our homes again? How can our land be ours again? Like, how can we toil our own land for our own food and be happy at home? Because there's this, immigration isn't exactly it's not a solution to what's going on back home. It's not, I'm almost on a high horse here, but, given I don't live there, but it's not a solution to the problem. Like, our solution should be centered around fixing the issues at home, as opposed to
running away from it.
Mm-hmm. That's a fair point. And like we talked about with returning, it's not possible for all of us to return back, but
No.
we can definitely help in some way. And just people need to be ready for it, because the world has been exposed now. I go home and I see, like, my nieces and nephews on Roblox, on TikTok, and telling me things I didn't know about the world. I'm like, this is great.
Facts.
Yeah.
Because you're changing your mindset and how you problem solve in the future. You're not thinking, like, in a linear manner, like, let me just go do corporate, the corporate role. And they're getting creative. I like that. I just think that it's also our role to now establish those ecosystems where they can thrive in. Right.
That's real versus running away from it.
Yeah.
Because, the mass exodus that especially youthful young African men under 18 who deem their path to making it in life a success is only through leaving and going out abroad. Like, that model is outdated, quite frankly, because even if you do make it out without the skills, the education, the experience, the demand in the markets you're going through, your quality of life will not be better than had you stayed and found opportunities.
Yeah, emphasis on the quality.
Regardless of that.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, what we need to more also advocate for is getting out is not going to be what you think you're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
So we should kind of think in between, finding solutions, staying uprooted, and making sure that we can continue to provide opportunities. So if we were outside and we have the resources, 10, 15 years later, we can show up as an investment group that will establish businesses that will employ in Uganda, in Nigeria, in Gambia. Yeah. That's the real power of us being abroad and being able to go back.
Because we've learned it here.
Because we've learned it here.
By living it.
Yes, by living it. Yeah. But if you just think, individually that's the only outcome for you, I think as of now, with the way the world is changing so quickly, it's probably not a realistic option.
Yeah.
So, I hope that's kind of what we should take from it.
Solid points and conversation here. We're going to have to do a part 2 on this one. David, thank you for joining us.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
you. Any parting words for your fans? I know there's a lot of them there. So.
Me, I don't get fans. But I would say parting words, just for people as Africans, is that we should remember, like, the whole topic of this colonization. I think one advantage the West had as well was trying to use tribalism or some type of lack of unity to conquer us. I think one way to reverse this is also just to unify within our countries, within the whole continent. There's just so much talk of, there's the Jollof Ghana joke, the Nigeria Ghana jokes. But at the same time, we should also remember, like, we're really of the same people. We didn't create our borders. Someone came and told us, this is the line here, you're Nigerian, and you're Togolese or from Benin. Yeah, those lines shouldn't, we didn't create them. We are people who should be united together and not fighting one another. But
another one of Clue's bombs on that one, bro. My guy is dropping it.
Hey, what did they say?
Clock out.
But yeah, again, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow our pages. We're on all platforms. Please engage with us on Substack. Really enjoyed today's conversation. Dovi, thank you again for joining us.
Appreciate it, brother.
Signing out for the Joel and Mighty podcast. Thank you. Peace.